Thank you, everybody. I hope you have enjoyed the 2 days. I don't know if the conversation around your table at lunch went like this, but this was the conversation at my table. So I think tomorrow we need to have a staff meeting and blow it all up and start over again. Right? And I didn't share this yesterday when I had a chance to present, but I was fortunate to be able to walk into a situation in our county where we were able to scrap it all, blow it up, and start over again. And a lot of what I shared with you yesterday was a result of being able to navigate change that was based on a blow-it-up model. And so if you're today, as we near the end of this conference, and you're overwhelmed with thoughts and ideas, and whether there's a few things you need to tweak or whether you want to blow it all up and start over again, there's some opportunity to navigate through change and transformation in our agencies and in our organizations so that hopefully we can transform the lives of the people we work with. And so in this last session, we have the opportunity to speak with four leaders of organizations that have had the opportunity to navigate change in their organizations. And so I hope just through the course of some conversation and some discussion that we're going to have up here that you're going to have some insight into maybe how to navigate some of those waters of change that you are ready to go and do tomorrow, which I hope includes changing the world. And so why don't you all just take a brief moment, introduce yourself, maybe share a little bit about where you're from, your organization, and then we'll kind of follow some question trail lines into some of the change that's gone on later and some of the experience you've had in there. So let's just start with a brief introduction. Grab a mic. There's one in front of you, please, and make sure they're turned on, which I believe is the switch on one side in the up position. So, yeah, please go ahead, Mark.
I have a few notes, and so if you wonder why I have the notes, I have some memory issues, so that's why I have notes, so thank you. I'm Mark Peerboom, and I'm from Tacoma, and Community Action Agency there, serving all of Pierce County, so it's about an hour south, of Seattle, and about 2.5 hours to Portland. We serve at the intersection of health and housing. So we look for those individuals who have the most complex needs. For us, that means mental health, addiction, and homelessness. It also means kids who have grown up in generational poverty. So that's our focus area. And I came to the organization about 6 years ago. Having been in community action for a short time before, I have to be transparent. I'm an accountant. Okay, I'm a social worker wannabe, okay? I love everybody in this room because I love social work. But my training, my education, all of that is accounting. So I'm the guy who talks about OMBs, A133s, unallowable, allowable costs, all those things that you guys never want to hear. I was that guy for a lot of years at Boeing, many different places in my past. But really have always wanted to be this social worker. So one thing I thought we might do, because we heard a lot over the last 2 days about all of this change we could address, and there were moments that I kind of felt bad. I kind of felt like, well, maybe we're not doing a good job. But you know what? I think we're doing an incredible job working within those inherent complex systems that we work in. So maybe we can just give ourselves a round of applause for that. So when I came to MDC, the first thing I asked was, what did we do well? And staff were all over it. We're awesome. We're community action. We're compliant. We're really good at eligibility. We have clean audits. And in this organization of 120 people at the time, client never came up. Being client-centered never came up. So I sat in on a LIHEAP eligibility intake during about the first month. And it took an hour and a half. And this poor woman, she shared every trauma she had had over her lifetime in that hour and a half. And after she left, I asked the case manager or the assessment worker, why does it take so long? And she said, well, we're doing case management. We want to find out everything they need. I thought that kind of makes sense. I said, so what did she leave with? Well, she got a light bulb. We gave her a light bulb, okay, and a water saver, and then we paid her electric bill. And I said, so she didn't get any other case management. Well, we don't have those services. We don't, and I said, oh, okay. So we're asking all these questions, making the person jump through all the hoops, but we don't have the services really to connect them to. So that's when we started thinking about client-centered, what would make a difference. My direct providers, they said, we need that glue in between all the different systems, and we need to have undesignated dollars. Everything is so restricted to us. And then we could do holistic care for these individuals. So what do? I had fund development experience. I said, we're going to go raise money, right? My board of directors got excited. They said, this is easy, call Oprah, right? Because we're awesome, okay? Well, I visited every mover and shaker in Tacoma and heard the same thing. Community action is bureaucratic. There's not significant impact. And what we want to do as local foundations and as philanthropists is invest locally to leverage local dollars. We don't feel like we should have to invest to hold up federal dollars. And that was the message we received. So it was kind of, okay, we'll do a fundraiser. We'll do an event. We had 350 people show up to our very first fundraiser in 50 years. I watched the program, had done it before. Staff did a fantastic job. I was in tears, client videos. 352 people there. We raised $20,000. I was thinking it was easy going to be $150,000. That would be simple, right? No, it was $20,000. And I said, this is going to be hard, and we can't rely on other people. We have to rely on ourselves. So how are we going to move out of it? So we changed our approach, and we went and we asked the community. That's what community action does, right? You go to your community and we ask. But we didn't go just to the other nonprofits and say, what should we do, what should you do? Because none of us had enough money, right? This is 2010. We're 2 years into a recession, right? Of course, it wasn't until 2010 that they told us we were in a recession, right? That started in 2008. So we talked to the hospitals. We talked to our government funders. We talked to the criminal justice system. We talked to all of those players and we said, not what we did. We didn't ask them, tell them what we did. We said, what should we do? What should MDC do for you? And without a doubt, they said, you guys need to serve those people with the most complex needs. It was across the board. And it was an independent survey. We had Cambia Foundation did that for us. It was wonderful. And I went to the staff and they said, but that's not who we are. We're LIHEAP. We're weatherization. We're community jobs. We're not these people living on the streets, with complex needs. That's not who we are. So we had to find the why. We didn't have the why. And so I look at today and we're talking about how you went through this change. For us, it was about finding the why. And I have a story that I wanted to tell real quick. This is our why, okay? And I consider Randy a friend of mine. I never got to meet Randy, but he's with me every day. And Randy was born in 1960 in Federal Way, which is just a few miles outside of Tacoma. And he had 4 sisters. And I connected with his story because I have 4 sisters, okay? I had that haircut, I think I even had the shirt. And I also noticed many young men in Portland have that haircut as well. So a little bit hipster. No bun, but. So that's Randy in 1960. Let's see if we can get this to go. And Federal Way is just a little bit, Tacoma's the second one down from the top. Federal Way is at the top. But when you talk community action, you'll see our community is Western State Hospital, a mental hospital. It's Joint Base Lewis McChord, Air Force, Army. It's Bremerton Naval across the water. So we are surrounded by people who have a lot of need, a lot of transitioning out of services there, and a lot of mental health need. And that's Randy at 19 years old. At 12, his father died. Okay, he was raised by his oldest sister, actually, because his mother had already passed. And at 19, he entered the Navy. 3 months later, he was dismissed from the Navy. He was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. Okay? He lived on the streets of Tacoma. That was in 1980. And everybody loved Randy on the streets of Tacoma, and everybody knew him. But very shortly thereafter, he went to Western State Hospital, where he lived the next 20 years. Okay? That's what we did 30 years ago, right? We do a little different now. But he would walk the streets of Tacoma, and he'd carry his Bible. And it was a large print Bible. And he was happy-go-lucky. He would come up right into your face and say hello to you. He would talk history. He would talk art. He always talked about raindrops on leaves. He had a fascination with that. And he often lived under the East 26th Street Bridge in downtown Tacoma, right in the heart of the city. And in March of 2003, typical, you know the weather in Portland, similar weather in Tacoma, it was wet, it was dark. He made his way to the bridge to sleep, where he had a sleeping bag, a couple tattered blankets, that was it. He had friends down there, everybody loved him, right? The other individuals experiencing homelessness loved him. And what he didn't know is there were 4 skinheads that had taken a vow with each other to kill a drug dealer. Randy wasn't a drug dealer, but as an initiation to their gang, they needed to kill a drug dealer. They went down and they found him and they hit him over the head with a baseball bat. Then they dropped a boulder on his head after he had passed out. They laid him across the railroad tracks, and he died 2 weeks later in the hospital. And so we began finding our why when this story came to us. And it was staff who brought the story. So we ended up building or rehabbing a building called the Randall Townsend Apartments. And it was a community project. And Department of Commerce is here. That was a funder in the project as well in Washington. And we built this in his honor. And this is 35 units of housing for people who have been chronically homeless and have a disability. Okay? They have a mental illness. They have a chemical addiction. It's housing first. So we found our why. And that's what I think is the most important thing when you go through a transition, is to find that why. Because our why wasn't LIHEAP. Our why wasn't helping people changing lives. Our why was Randy. So it's been dedicated to him. His friends called him kind, sensitive, and homeless. And so that is the Randall Townsend project we developed. And really, really important to our community and what brought our community together, and really what is, I think, community action. So once we found that why, everything started to happen for us. Okay? I didn't need to go to the movers and shakers. I needed to go to the moved and the shaken. Okay? People who were already connected to what we do. The healthcare system loved us. They loved Randy. Everyone knew Randy's story. They were just looking for someone to take it on. So what did we do? 2013, we become a licensed mental health center. Fill out the darn application. You know, it's a little harder than that, but but it was about courage, and we said, we're going to do it. We opened up a co-occurring treatment center in the local shelter. So we provide chemical dependency and mental health services through an integrated model. So one provider duly licensed. We have about 10 providers now doing that work. We opened up this in the same year. Oh, Governor Inslee, the legislature in Washington, they say, we need another psychiatric hospital. We want 3 more 16-bed evaluation and treatment centers. That got signed. Our hand went up and we said, we'll do it. Okay, no time. We just did it. 6 months to build a contract, 3 months to build the project. Okay, 7 years to do the Randall Townsend. Hundreds of funders in Randall Townsend. The psychiatric hospital, 2 funders. One that said, here's $4 million. The other one said, well, if you don't have enough money, here's another $1 million. And we never saw them till the ribbon cutting. So we opened that. We changed our contracts from cost reimbursement to pay for performance. So most of our contracts are pay for performance now because you can never get ahead on cost reimbursement. And in 18 months, what we've done, so all of these projects have been going about 18 months. We've been returning about $1.2 million annually back into our community action programs from these projects, which are very mission driven. So, because we had the discussion about let's open Baskin & Robbins, let's do this, let's do that. And we didn't know how to do that. We knew how to do this, right? So we did these things, and the profit from those things go back into funding the community action work of the agency. So that's how we got there, but the main thing I think to remember is the why. Get your why. Don't hitch your wagon to falling stars, hitch them to the rising stars. Listen to your community. Be a problem solver for those key systems. So, and don't go to them saying, this is what I can bring you. Say, what do you need? And then say, how are you going to pay us for it? You know, you don't have to use all your money to help the hospitals. Okay, we have a new project we're doing because of the Randall Townsend. We saved $750,000 for the hospital system, the criminal justice system, the insurance companies. We saved all of that money last year. We want some of it. Okay, so we want it back, right? So working on that. Always check in with yourself on what you're doing and spend more time with the moved and shaken, not the movers and shakers. So, thank you.
I'm Lisa Stoddard. I'm the executive director of the CAP agency that's located in Lewiston, Idaho. And we are kind of a unique CAP agency as far as I know across the nation. We're one, maybe the only one, but at least one of the very few agencies that serves across state lines. So we serve 10 counties in northern Idaho, and we serve Asotin County in southeastern Washington. So we have the opportunity to be part of 2 state systems. Opportunity, and but we also have the opportunity to be part of 2 associations and associate with really great folks. And then you heard yesterday about the 3-state Idaho, Oregon, Washington stuff. So we've gotten to be good friends with the Oregon peeps too, and there's something to that that community building that happens. That's really an important part of this. So. I was going to sit at the table, but then Mark got all formal, and he wore a jacket, and he stood up, and then I realized you can't really see this side of the room if you're sitting down. So a couple of things just to build on what Mark said. Our agency went through what we call transformational strategic planning about 8 years ago now. And the why, as Mark and I were talking, that was really one of the things that we paid attention to as well. If you're looking for something to really help you think through that, there's a great TED Talk. The guy's name is Simon Sinek, and I think the name of the TED Talk is The Power of Why. And he talks about the fact that none of us buy a what, but we do buy the why. And so when we really started to embrace that as well, it really caused us to change the conversation in our communities. So like Mark, we were used to talking about the what we did, right? We do LIHEAP, we do weatherization, we do food banks. And when we really got clear about the why, what we wanted to see in our community, it changed the whole conversation in our community. So when we were the folks coming in and saying, you know, there are poor people in our community and they need food and we provide food, people's eyes started to kind of glaze over. It's a huge issue. We don't know what to do about it. I really firmly believe that everybody wants to do something about poverty, but we start talking about it and people just go, I don't know what to do, and they kind of zone out. But when we started talking about, we want every kid in our community to be ready for kindergarten when they hit that age, everybody said to us, well, of course we do. You know, if we want every kid to graduate from high school, well, of course we do. So people that we had never been able to have conversation with before, people that we've never really had connections with before, were now at the table going, yeah, well, yeah, of course we do. And when we started talking from that frame, just like Mark described, we saw partners come to the table with us that we had never seen before. So getting clear about your why is a really important first step. I encourage you all to think about that. And I know we go back, and it's so easy to get sucked back into the what, right? But we've had just this great 2 days of really trying to think through some big things. So give yourself permission tomorrow to take some time to really think about your why. Mark and I didn't actually plan this, although we're friends. But we really had this idea that we had to talk to the movers and the shakers, right? We had to be at the table, we had to talk to the mayors, we had to talk to county commissioners. We still need to talk to them, but they weren't the people that were willing to get things done with us. And so Angie and Mark, who work at CAP with me, gave you a copy that looks like this. And this is a kind of a new format of how we're trying to talk to our community. So when we started talking about our strategic plan, and it was this big binder, no one cared, you know? I mean, it's just too complex. It doesn't make any sense to people. No one cared. So we've been, over the last 8 years, working towards getting this document in place, which starts on the front with our vision, which is our community working together to end poverty. Tells you right there that one of the things we decided was that this just wasn't us, right? It had to involve our entire community. And then when you open it up, it gives you at the top our mission statement, which used to be about providing services for people and helping them gain self-sufficiency, which is a word I also hate, and we don't use anymore in our organization because none of us are. So why would we expect people in poverty to become self-sufficient? But our mission statement now is about inspiring and equipping people to end poverty. Totally different focus than what we had in the past. The rest of the inside text is our most recent needs assessment information. So we, through all the same needs assessment things that you guys all do, we surveyed people, we had focus groups, we looked at, kind of population level data. This is the stuff that is kind of compelling and keeps us kind of up at night. And then on the back, you have our strategic plan. So this doesn't look like a traditional strategic plan, and we could have people, we haven't yet, but we could have people very well tell us, nah, that's not a strategic plan, but it really is. And you don't see a lot of kind of traditional increase this percentage by this time frame, or do this specific activity, or this specific task. And here's why we've done it that way. We felt like we really needed to be open to opportunity. So we needed to say, we want every child in our community to be kindergarten ready when they hit the doors of kindergarten. And who wants that with us? And we found all kinds of people who wanted that with us. Early child care providers, kindergarten teachers, just all kinds of folks. Funders, Twin County United Way. So those people who we wouldn't have probably necessarily gone to the table with before, we're like, yes, we want the same thing. So how can we work towards this together? Same thing with the K-12 and the post-secondary. We hadn't ever done any work with Lewiston, where our headquarters is in 30 miles of 4 higher ed institutions. So within 30 miles, we have the University of Idaho, Washington State University, Lewis Clark State College, and Walla Walla Community College. We'd never worked with any of those institutions before. But when we started talking about retention and seeing all these people who were coming through our doors, had started college and then quit, and had huge student loan debt that they were grappling with. And so we started talking about retention. Then we were at the table with those institutions, and funders were coming to the table. So really getting clear again about the why, what you want to see happen in your community, just brought all kinds of resources to us. Some lessons learned, I guess. It's hard. I mean, it's really hard work. We think the work that we do as far as qualifying people for services and doing service delivery is hard. This is way harder than that. And some of the reasons it's hard is because of things we've talked about over the last couple of days. It's hard to scale things. We have some really successful projects, greatly increased kindergarten readiness. But we've done that at a couple of elementary schools in our area with small cohorts of kids. How do you scale that up to the entire school district in 11 counties where we do that work? It's tough. I mean, that kind of thing is hard. You guys all know that. If it's really about listening to your community, you have to let go of some of the control, right? So if you really are going to be at the table, and I'm not saying anything that we haven't heard over the last couple of days, but if you really are going to be at the table and be a node, you have to be willing to let go of all the money, the results. They might not be exactly the results that you would have worked towards. And it's messy. It's a messy process. That community building, that really valuing what other people bring to the table and trying to figure out how all those nodes can kind of start to fit together and work together. It's messy, and it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of energy. So informal poll. How many of you in the room would say that you are essentially an introvert? Raise your hand. I might have thought even more. So we've had some conversations about so many people in this field seem to be introverts who have to function as extroverts in our job, right? So this kind of community building work is really exhausting, and it's really hard. But boy, is it worth it. The results that we've seen, we would never have seen on our own. We would never have seen more kids ready for kindergarten. We would never have seen more people being retained at the post-secondary level. We'd never have seen some of the partnerships that we've had. So hang in there, even if you're an introvert. We early on decided that one of the things that we really wanted to function on was a systems change. So we all get this question, well, if we're going to give you some money for this project sounds great, sounds like you're going to have great outcomes, how are you going to sustain it? And so our answer to that was, well, we're going to work within existing systems, and we're going to change the way that those systems interact with the kids and the families that we work with every day. And when this funding is gone, those systems are still going to change. So if Melissa talked yesterday about, we worked with one of the elementary schools in our district who, rightly so, I mean, they had taken this stance that if kids are late for school, they're missing out on valuable instruction time. They need to get into the classroom. So even if they're kids that qualify for free and reduced breakfast, we're going to get them into the classroom because they need that instruction time. Yes, they do. But we were able then to talk to them about, but what they really probably need is breakfast first, right? So it will improve your overall learning outcomes if those kids still get breakfast before they get into the classroom. That systems change kind of thing lives on long after we leave, long after funds leave. So one of the things I would say is really look towards those systems. we feel like it has allowed us to have way more impact than we would have, just on our own, and it's sustainable long after we're gone. It isn't always, so the last thing I guess I'd leave you with is, it isn't always the person you think it's going to be who's your strategic partner. So again, sometimes it is the CEO, but we've found that a lot of times it's not. And so if we can align with the people who want the same outcomes that we do, who are buying into our why, that's when we start to really see things happen. It's not necessarily because we got the CEO to come and talk to us. So know your why, and don't give up on who you need to talk to. I mean, we started out thinking, well, with the school district, we have to go to the superintendent. And then what we figured out is, no, we really have to go to this principal who is really engaged in this idea, and then things will grow from there. Or we have to go to the HR director. We do a lot of work with businesses, and we're trying to help businesses retain folks so that they can stay in a job for at least a year so that they have opportunity for advancement and more opportunity within that organization, within that business, or another business. And so sometimes it's the HR director, or sometimes it's a supervisor. It's not necessarily the person, it's the people who are connected. It's not necessarily the mover and the shaker. Last thing I guess I would say, go where people are. We have tried to now make sure that we're doing projects and initiatives in the school, at local businesses, out in the community, and not at our office. So know your why, get out there, even if it's exhausting, and look for those strategic partners who have those same desires to hit those outcomes that you do, and hang in there. It's tough. Thank you.
I had a friend and a mentor and a coach one time that said, if you don't know your why, ask yourself this question. If the doors of your business were to close on Monday, would anybody notice? Would anybody know the difference if our agencies all shut down next week? The answer is no. We have a bigger problem. But if the answer is yes, then understanding who would notice is the beginning to understanding why you exist. So something to consider maybe if you're wrestling with that question, why do we exist? Start with the idea of if we were to shut our business down, if we were to shut our organization down, who would notice and why? Just a way to maybe think and process through that question. Jennifer, why don't you come on up and introduce yourself and share with us?
Well, thank you. Can you hear me? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for allowing me to have the opportunity to share some of the great work that we get to do every day. And I am confident that there are a number of you in the audience that too get to do great work every day. And I am sorry that you do not have the opportunity to share some of that, but I'm certain you're doing some incredible things. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what it is we do and our agency. So I'm Jennifer Godfrey. I am the Chief Operations Officer of Social Services for Salt Lake Community Action Agency. Our CAP agency is about $23 million, and we have a staff of 500. Over the last 2 years, our agency has undergone a huge transformation in that we have a new CEO at the helm who has been tasked with really trying to break down silos within our agency and starting to make us whole. You know, I'm sure many of you over the course of the years have done this where certain programs operated very independently. And those programs, not to say that they weren't doing a good job, but we weren't one. We were 7 different programs that were operating very different ways and had different goals across the board. Our biggest challenge was that as we were doing interagency referrals, our clients were applying for program after program after program, and there was no way that we could kind of streamline that system for them. And so we realized and recognized that as we wanted these clients to start to make changes and we wanted them to access all of these services, that we too needed to look at the barriers that we were putting in place for them. And we could see that we had a number of them. If we really wanted to hold the mirror up to it, we had a lot of work to do. And so for the first time in 35 years, we did a 5-year strategic plan for the agency as a whole. And part of that strategic plan really looked at development funding. So we weren't just chasing dollars. We knew where those dollars were going to go. And those dollars were going to be used towards programs that met our mission and the purpose of what we did every day. As we started to do this work, we didn't just rally around our leadership team or our board members. We brought in all of our funders. We brought in our community partners. We brought in our staff. We brought in our clients. And as we started to hear some of the things they had to say, it wasn't always great things. And that was okay. And some of it was really, really challenging to hear. And other things we were just like, oh yeah, high five. That was a good day. But some of those were far in between, depending on who you were talking to and what services you were looking at. So we decided to truly break down those silos, and in order for us to do that, we realized we had to start changing the experiences our staff had in order for us to start changing their beliefs that they had around being one. And so an example of that would be our weatherization department. And as these men are in the homes and weatherizing these homes and putting in systems and seeing the grandchildren run around, we said, what is that going to mean if we start to hook them up with Head Start services? What does that look like? And what it took was going back to the home and the grandmother saying, wow, Johnny loves preschool. He's absolutely enjoying it. Thank you so much for helping me get connected with Head Start services. It took those types of experiences to start to change their beliefs around what we were doing, and for us to start looking at becoming one agency rather than 7 programs that all operated underneath the same name. So it's easy for us to say we are Salt Lake Community Action Program. Everybody knew Head Start. Everybody knows where the beautiful children are and what's happening within those classrooms. But not everybody knew heat. Not everybody knew weatherization or our food pantries. And so we decided to look at those, and we looked at the whys and what we were doing. And we said, wow, we operate 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. But don't worry, everybody can get there because it meets our needs as a staff. And so we started to look at that, and we knew we had to extend our staff hours because they're not working just 1 or 2 jobs in some instances, and not all of them can get there 8 to 5. So we extended our hours from 8 to 7 and opened hours on Saturday as well, which was a nightmare for staff. But it's worked for the clients, right? They still come. So we have those appointments, and without fail, those appointments are booking up, and they're showing up, which means they still need us. We took our case management services, and rather than hosting them at one building, and we were a team of 4 when we started this system, we're now a team of 20 case managers that we scattered throughout the valley because it was important for us to go to the communities in which our clients were living in. They could all come to us. We have bus, we have transportation services, they made it, but it wasn't necessarily the right thing to do. So as we expanded our case managers and we put them out into the communities in which our clients lived, they too had to become familiar with the resources that our clients had to access every day, which meant we built new partners within the communities. And those partners were thankful that we were there. And we started to strengthen those partnerships, and without fail, other partners came to and said, hey, I heard you're here. What can we do? What does this need to look like? And so others within our community too saw that there was a need for all of us to be there and to be together. We didn't have adult education services. Everybody said they needed a GED or an ESL, and we were counting on local providers to help put that in place. But we decided we're not going to wait for somebody else to do this. We tried to partner, and we do have a number of partners that are doing it. I'm looking to Patty, who is running this program. So those partners came on board with us, and they helped us make it happen within the community so we could see more people access those services. And we could see that they're making gains in what it is that they're working on, whether it be a GED or a CDA, and we can place them in employment through one of our other programs. We started to watch that, but more importantly, we started to be part of it. People in the community, as I mentioned, they knew us, but we weren't at the table. We were in the room. We weren't making decisions. We weren't always necessarily easy to play within the sandbox. And we decided in order for us to get some of the changes we wanted, we did have to be there, and we had to be a voice for these people that we're working with every day. And so we started to say, and we're new to this, it's been 2 years since we've been doing it, although I've been with the agency for 16 years. So you get that moment of, I'm still naive enough to ask questions, right? Which we'll play on for a little bit longer. So as you're sitting in the rooms and you're saying, well, gosh, why aren't we doing this? You know? And partners say, well, of course we can't do it. How are we going to make that happen? It was okay for us to ask those questions. An example of this would be our diversion pilot. So Salt Lake is really known for our homeless services, and the back end of it is built out incredibly well. But what we don't have in Salt Lake City is we don't have coordinated assessment, and we don't have diversion. So once they get to the shelter, it flows beautifully. But everything before that is a no wrong door approach. And so going to conferences and hearing some of our incredible minds across the country share what it is they're doing, it was easy to say, why aren't we doing diversion? And why can't this happen? And everybody said, well, there's no coordinated assessment. There's no system to put it in place with. And we said, well, let's just try it. What's it going to look like? And so we applied for funding to run this program, and everybody was a little leery to fund anything. So we got $50,000, which all of us in this room know you can't do much for 50 grand, but we'll try. And sure enough, we had some other partners that came to the table, and they said, we'll make you whole. And for us, it was the LDS Church that came forth and gave us another $65,000 to run this program. So we took some time to make sure that everybody in the community knew what this program was and what it was going to mean for our community. We had community forums. We brought in Ed Boyd, who's kind of the guru in regards to diversion, and we made sure that everybody that was going to touch our clients, or everybody who was going to even be asked about what this was, could articulate it just a little bit. And our goal was to divert 25% of those families that were assessed at the shelter door from entering that night. And for our pilot, we only did families. And we've been fully operational for 6 months, and we've been able to divert 48% of those families coming to the shelter door. And that means a lot for those children and families that never had to walk in that door. So to make it, just tweak it just a little bit, you know, because everybody likes to do things like we've always done it, and nobody likes change. So we decided that for us, change means opportunity, not only for us, but also for our clients. And so once they're diverted for these families, we have something, our case managers do ongoing case management for them. And they're there for as long as the client is willing to engage in case management services. So once they're diverted, we can really sit down and work on the housing stability plan and some of those other resources that they may need in order to help them stabilize and have a home for them and their children to go home to every night. And that looks very different than some of the other models that are happening across the country, but that's okay. We're okay looking a little different. We operate food pantries, but as many of you know in this room who also operate food pantries, sometimes you don't always get the best of food that comes in. We weren't really getting a lot of fresh produce, and that meant something to us. We wanted our families to be able to have the option to pick up the apples off the shelf, or to grab a head of lettuce, or to take something home that maybe their children have never even tried before, like a kiwi. And so we decided to launch into community gardens and do more of a farm-to-table approach. And so now those families are able to take home fresh fruits and vegetables that otherwise they really wouldn't have had access to. So I'm not saying anything new. I'm not doing anything that none of you in this room have likely done. But what we decided to do was we decided to make a change. And we decided that we needed to be held accountable to our clients, not necessarily to our staff. And this wasn't here to meet our needs. We're here to meet the community needs. And if we start to look at change overall, we realize that our communities are ever changing. Things are flexing all the time. And as an agency, we can't sit back and wait for that change or wait for them to fall into our systems and understand what we're doing. It's part of our mission and our job to change with the communities and to be able to evolve to meet their needs as well. So I guess if I could share anything in regards to some of the lessons that we learned, as I mentioned, change is opportunity. There's some great things that can be done with some small tweaks. To be an active participant at the table, to have a voice, and to not be afraid to make those changes. Just because they said it can't be done truly doesn't mean it can't. Granted, we all want the dollars to go with it. And sometimes those dollars, that means if we aren't the right ones to do it, it's okay to hand them back. And it's okay to find a partner in the community that says, you're doing this really well. What if we give you that money to do it? And that's how we build strong partnerships. It isn't for us just to take on the system as a whole. It's for us to be a niche and a piece of the pie. But I think sometimes we too get territorial, and sometimes it's okay to look at those boundaries and blur the lines just a little bit. And I think the last thing I just want to share is to be reflective. It's something that all of us need to do. We ask our clients to do it every day as they come in and look at what's happening or why things aren't working for them. And we too as agencies need to be mindful of that and take the time to really look at what we're doing. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much. One thing, not silos, cylinders of excellence. I am going to remember that and keep that for forever from this week. It's going to change my thinking for sure. One of the things that you talked about that I think was really important. Somebody asked me the same question: how do you start these partnerships? My boss asks me all the time, "Why are you never in the office?" And I'm never in the office because partnerships is a direct correlation to the amount of time we spend building relationships with others. Ultimately, what we do, whether it's building partnerships or whether it's serving our community or whether it's working with clients, is about the relationships we build with them, and relationships take time. And so I want to encourage you as you consider what change, it's a matter of what time investment maybe you need to make. What relationships you need to invest in. Is it okay if somebody's not in the office because they're at coffee or having lunch with somebody? But that relationship and time and building relationships with people is so important if we're going to hear what our customers need, if we're going to hear what our clients need, if we're going to hear what our community needs, and if we're going to hear what we need to do to be a part of those solutions, right? So last but not least, Jackie, would you come up and share with us a little bit about some of the change you've navigated and some of the things that have gone on in your organization? Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, the staff's always making fun of me because I'm a Luddite, so I actually put my notes on my iPad. I'll see if I can avoid knocking it over. I wanted to say a couple things. It's been so interesting the last couple days for me, I think, to hear a lot of the theoretical framework that's been coming out of our speakers, because I think a lot of what we do is we sort of inch our way along by instinct and intuition, and maybe this is a good idea, and someone told me that would be a good idea, and so it was kind of fun to listen to people just sort of tie it all together and go, oh, hey, we're pretty hot stuff. We did that. And I also want to commend, up here on the stage is one of my heroes, because about 5 years ago I was sitting in a gathering like this, and that was the era. Remember when I can't remember his name, but he was telling us we had to stop using the word poverty because it was putting people off. And Lisa stood up and went, no, we're not going to stop using the word poverty. We have to name what we're doing. And I remember going back to my office and thinking, oh yeah, she's right. Let's see, how can I use that? And then I did a dangerous thing. I actually read my NPI report. And it said a lot of our people are working. So we started saying in Jackson County, poverty has a job. And it's working in your gas stations, in your restaurants, in your motels, in your hospitals. It's all around you. Those are our clients. And it changed the way, I think it started to change the way we really thought about what we were doing, who we were, and who our clients were. I mean, they're everybody. We know poverty comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes and permutations. But that really changed my thinking pretty profoundly when I realized who was coming through our doors and still is. So like everybody up here, we really didn't coordinate, but we're all on such parallel tracks in different parts of the country and different sizes of organizations. It's fascinating. Because we had a similar kind of thing happen to us about five 5 years ago or so, we had to do a new strategic plan. One does, and we hired a great consultant. And she said, well, the first thing you have to think about is, this was a board and staff retreat. We had many gatherings over the course of a year. She said, we have to think about what you want to become. We're like, what do we want to become? You need a transformational goal. And we started thinking about how much energy we put into our operations and our compliance and our files and our fundraising and our infrastructure. And then someone said, but we got to learn how to treat our clients like whole people. And that comment changed the entire direction of that process, I got to tell you. And the transformational goal became, we want to change from an internally focused organization to an externally focused organization. And that was the entire rubric of everything that flowed from that comment. So we ended up with 4 strategic initiatives. We had a nice brochure like Lisa's in the end. We also have a fancy long version that we paid a designer to do. It's really cool. It's out of date now, but it was beautiful. Still is. Still beautiful. I keep it on my desk. But I'm going to need water before I'm done because my allergies will start kicking in. Just grab me the glass. Thanks.
Was that yours already? Oh, okay.
Talk fast. So the first goal was treat each client situation holistically. And we came up with a whole bunch of indicators of that. At one point, we had a staff retreat. We took 60 people away for a day in a beautiful spot, and we started breaking up into small groups. And the amazing comments that came out of people were like, well, how come people have to change their baby's diapers on the floor of the waiting room? How come we can't have more comfortable chairs? How come we can't, have well, this wasn't a complete success, but how come we can't repaint the lobby? The United Way volunteers had a slightly unfortunate color, but it was newly painted. So, and then things like, well, let's have a baby changing table in the bathroom, by golly, which we got immediately. So it started out really small things. Then and then we got into the silo issue of, well, someone comes in for energy assistance, why should they have to come back 2 weeks later for food? Or why? I'd like to know more about your program so I could help my people who come for food if they need an energy appointment. And so out of that flowed a whole years of cross-training and different ways of thinking about people, tools to find out what people wanted when they came through the door or needed. This is culminating. We're in what phase 4 of an experiment right now. We just created, and the gentleman who created it, sitting right down here, David Muley, a client service division. We're not calling it energy or rental, or it's client service. And the woman who's coordinating it is sitting over there, Vicki D'Alessandro. And so we're, from the time a person has a first contact with us, the idea is that we will be listening, helping, bridging, doing whatever's necessary. So that was a pretty profound change in our organization. Second one was we wanted to learn to work well with others, something which, had been a challenge for Access for a while. And so I like this language, so I'll read it. Expand, build, and leverage our collaborative advantage. We will use our convening power to seek solutions for pressing needs, and we will jointly plan and fundraise with other organizations. That was fairly daring when we set that out as a goal. We were going to have at least 2 joint fundraising proposals submitted over a 3-year period. We beat that goal in year 1. And I'm going to tell a story because I have some more colleagues in the room who were part of this. One of those was the first joint SSVF, the Support Services for Veterans proposal. Mike Fieldman and Mike Lehman, our friends at Orca and UCAN and Access, decided we'd go together because we had a better chance as a 5-county proposal. So naively, our first proposal was we are 3 co-equal collaborators. We'll make all decisions jointly. Nobody's in charge. We're going to go forth together. Yeah, she's laughing because the VA turned us down in about 7 seconds. They weren't ready for us, right, guys? So the second proposal, we decided one of us had to be in charge on paper, and we were the lucky winners because we happened to have a little extra capacity the month the darn thing was due. So we've been doing the fiscal management ever since. But that's been a great collaboration. It's still going on. What are we in our 4th year now? That's been a great collaboration and a great learning experience, I think, for all of us. And so we've done many of those kinds of collaborations. We've got a whole food system network going now that didn't exist, brought together many kinds of organizations. We're very active in an early learning network. The new coordinated care organizations, we're very active in the healthcare network. Excuse me. And I'm also a Rotarian, in addition to being a community action person, and I learn a lot from my Rotary colleagues. And a couple years ago, I read an article called How to Be a Good Follower. So one of the things we've learned in collaborating is that sometimes we have to be good followers, not just good leaders. We have to support, we've used community service block grant dollars to help support some of these joint efforts where it's appropriate. We've shared other kinds of resources. And I think in our community, we're building very strong collaborations. I know he wants me to hurry up, so I'll hurry up. And the last thing was just to welcome the participation of anybody and everybody who wanted to walk through our doors and help. What Jennifer and Lisa are both saying, well, and Mark too, that when we put out a need, anybody who wants to work on it, come to the table, you're all welcome. When others call, we try to be there as well. And so it's quite a joyride. Now we're starting a new plan. We're challenged to come up with some new goals to carry the work forward. But I would support the observations that my colleagues have made. It's really a joyful ride. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Whenever I'm doing something that I'm afraid I could get fired for, and I get the question, Saran, what are you up to? This is my response. I'm just changing the world. And I think one of the things we all talked about is that really we leave this time, we leave something like this, and we see the opportunity to change the world or to change our communities or to change the lives of our customers or to change our organizations. I think one of the things that all 4 of you really described very well was that the reality is that change starts inside of each one of us. And until we hold the mirror up to ourselves as leaders or as staff workers or as volunteers or as agencies, as board of directors, and we begin to understand what we have to change first and are really honest with ourselves about that, changing the world is just an excuse to keep myself from getting out of trouble. So I guess my challenge to you as we conclude our time, and I want to thank just everybody from Mark and Lisa and Jennifer and Jackie for sharing your stories, is as you leave, as you're excited to go back and scrap it all and change the world, is I guess to just begin by and start with reflecting on what do you as an individual need to change about how you live your life, about how you lead, about how you do your job in your workplace, in your families, in your own neighborhoods. I guess that would be my challenge to all of us, is to consider what we need to change first before we just go and decide what we're going to make everybody else change, right? So would you just join me in thanking our panelists for their stories.